My name is Shanice Williams. I want to tell you a true story about my life. It is a story about my mother and about my former husband. It is a story about love and betrayal. It is a story about loss and protection. Most of all, it is a story about a mother who kept loving her child even after death. Everything began 2 days after we buried my mother. Only 2 days had passed. I was still wearing black clothes. I was still waking up in the night crying until my chest hurt. I was still finding her reading glasses on the kitchen table and her favorite scarf on the back of a chair. Every small thing reminded me that she was gone. Every reminder broke my heart all over again. My mother was named Gloria Patterson. She was my whole world. When I was a little girl, my father died. I was only 7 years old. From that day forward, my mother raised me alone. She worked 2 jobs most of the time. Sometimes she worked 3. She left home early in the morning and came back late at night. She was always tired, but she never complained. She made sure I had school clothes. She made sure I had food. She made sure I felt loved. She saved money carefully. She denied herself many pleasures so that I could have opportunities. She paid for my college education. She attended my graduation. She cried tears of joy when I walked across that stage. She also stood beside me on my wedding day. I remember holding her hand before I walked down the aisle. She was smiling, but her eyes looked worried. At the time, I ignored it. I thought she was just emotional because her little girl was getting married. Now I understand that she saw something I refused to see. The man I married was named Marcus. When I met Marcus, I was young and hopeful. He was charming. He was handsome. He spoke with confidence. He knew how to make me laugh. He told me I was beautiful and intelligent. He told me he admired how close I was to my mother. He said he wanted to build a future with me. We married when I was 23 years old. The first few years felt good. Marcus worked in sales. I worked as a teacher at a local elementary school. We bought a small house. We decorated it together. We talked about children and vacations and retirement. I believed we were building something solid. My mother never said anything directly bad about Marcus. She was a respectful woman. She believed in letting adults make their own choices. But sometimes she would look at him in a quiet way. Sometimes she would pull me aside and ask if I was truly happy. Not just happy on the outside, but deeply happy in my heart. I always told her yes. I believed it at the time. About 5 years into our marriage, Marcus began to change. At first it was small. He talked more about money. He talked about people who had larger homes and more expensive cars. He started comparing us to others. He said teaching did not pay enough. He said we deserved more than a modest life. He would drive through wealthy neighborhoods and imagine living there. He would say that one day we would be rich. He would talk about investments and opportunities. He began to complain that my mother should have invested better. He made comments about how much more comfortable we would be if we had more wealth. I ignored the warning signs. I told myself that marriage required patience. I told myself that every couple had hard seasons. My mother raised me to be loyal. She taught me that commitment was important. So I stayed focused on loving Marcus and supporting him. Then everything changed in a way I could never have predicted. 3 months before my mother died, she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came suddenly. 1 week she was cooking Sunday dinner and singing in the church choir. The next week she was sitting in a hospital room hearing that she might have only 6 months to live. She lived for 4 months after that diagnosis. Those 4 months were the hardest months of my life. They were also precious. I took leave from my job so I could care for her. I moved into her house. I wanted to be there every hour of every day. Marcus did not like that decision. He said I was neglecting our marriage. He said I was putting him second. He said he needed me at home. For the first time in our marriage, I stood firm. I told him my mother needed me more. I told him that this was not negotiable. During those months, my mother and I talked about everything. We talked about my childhood. We talked about my father. She told me stories she had never shared before. She spoke about her own dreams and disappointments. She spoke about the sacrifices she made. She told me again and again that she loved me and wanted me to be happy. One night about 2 weeks before she passed, she held my hand and asked me to promise her something. She asked me to promise that I would be strong. She asked me to promise that I would stand up for myself no matter what happened. She asked me to promise that I would not let anyone make me feel small or unworthy. Then she told me to trust her lawyer, Bernard Jackson. She said he had been her attorney for many years and that he was a good man. She said that when the time came I should listen to him carefully. She also said something that I did not understand at the time. She said that some people reveal their true nature when they believe they have something to gain. She told me to watch for that. I thought she was just being protective. I did not realize she was warning me. My mother died on a Tuesday morning in October. I was holding her hand. Marcus was at work. He said he could not miss more time. My best friend Kesha was there. Our pastor was there. My mother left this world peacefully while I whispered that I loved her. The funeral was beautiful and painful. The church was full. People stood up and shared stories about how my mother had helped them. The choir sang her favorite hymns. I cried through the entire service. Marcus sat beside me holding my hand. He looked supportive. But the night before the funeral, he had asked about her will. He wanted to know if she left paperwork. He wanted to know about property and savings. I told him I did not want to talk about money while grieving. The day after the funeral, I was at home in my pajamas surrounded by sympathy cards and food from church members. Marcus came into the bedroom and told me we needed to talk. He said he thought we should separate. At first I could not understand his words. My mother had just been buried. I was still numb with grief. He said he had been unhappy for months. He said we had grown apart. He said he needed space. I felt my body go cold. I asked him how he could say that now. He told me not to be dramatic. He said our marriage had been dead for years. I told him to leave the room. The next morning he returned with divorce papers. He had already filed. He placed the papers on the kitchen table and told me to sign them so that we could split everything equally and move on. He spoke calmly as if we were discussing the weather. He said that under community property law, whatever assets came into the marriage would be divided equally. He said he was only being fair. In that moment I understood that this was about money. It was about whatever inheritance my mother left me. I told him to leave the house. He refused at first, but eventually went to stay with his brother. Before he left he told me that if my mother left me anything it would belong to both of us until the divorce was final. After he left I sat at the table staring at those papers. Then I remembered my mother telling me to trust Bernard Jackson. I called his office that afternoon. His receptionist said he had been expecting my call. That surprised me. The next day I went to his office. He hugged me and expressed his sympathy. Then he explained that 6 months earlier my mother had updated her will and created several trusts. He asked if Marcus had mentioned the inheritance. When I told him yes, he nodded. He said my mother predicted that Marcus would file for divorce after her death. He then explained that my mother left me everything she owned. Her house, which was worth several $100,000. Her savings accounts. Her life insurance. Her investments. The total value was $1,730,000. I was shocked. I knew my mother saved money, but I did not realize she had accumulated so much. Attorney Jackson explained that my mother had placed every asset into an inheritance protection trust. According to the terms of that trust, the money belonged to me alone. It could not be divided in a divorce. It could not be claimed by a spouse. Then he handed me a letter written in my mother's handwriting. In that letter, she told me that she had noticed changes in Marcus years earlier. She said she hoped she was wrong, but she prepared in case she was right. She wanted me to have freedom. She wanted me to have the ability to leave if necessary. She wanted me to build a life without fear. She also instructed her lawyer that if Marcus filed for divorce within the first year after her passing, he was to assist me immediately and use funds she set aside for my legal fees. I cried deeply in that office. My mother had protected me. Attorney Jackson advised me to let Marcus believe he would receive half of the inheritance. He said we needed to let him reveal his true intentions fully. When I returned home, I pretended I did not know about the trust. I told Marcus that the estate was worth nearly $2 million. I watched his face light up. He tried to act calm, but I saw the greed in his eyes. Over the next weeks, he constantly asked about the money. He suggested selling my mother's house quickly. He talked about dividing the funds. He said we should each hire strong lawyers. Then one afternoon he asked me for $100,000 as an advance on his share. He claimed he had a business opportunity that required immediate investment. That was the moment my mother predicted. I went straight to Attorney Jackson and told him what Marcus had requested. He said it was time. We scheduled a meeting with Marcus and his divorce lawyer. During that meeting, Attorney Jackson presented the trust documents. He explained clearly that the inheritance was separate property and could not be divided. Marcus reacted with anger and disbelief. He insulted my mother. He accused me of tricking him. For the first time in our marriage, I stood up without fear. I told him to get out of my life. After that meeting, he moved out but left a threatening note. Soon after, he began spreading lies about me online. He accused me of being abusive and greedy. Some people believed him. It hurt deeply. Then one afternoon I returned home from work and found my front door open. My house had been destroyed. Furniture was damaged. Dishes were broken. Red paint covered the walls. My mother's pearls were crushed on the floor. A message was written on my mirror threatening me. I called the police. Marcus was arrested that night. At his bond hearing, I spoke directly to the judge. I explained how Marcus had revealed his true character when he realized he would not get my inheritance. I asked for protection. The judge granted a restraining order. The divorce continued. Marcus attempted to challenge the trust but failed. The law was clear. The inheritance was mine. He pleaded guilty to criminal charges related to the break-in and vandalism. He received probation and was required to pay for the damage. Months later, the divorce was finalized. We divided our marital assets fairly. My inheritance remained untouched. When the judge signed the final papers, I felt as if I could breathe again. I used part of the inheritance to renovate my mother's house. I enrolled in graduate school to earn my master's degree in education. I traveled to places my mother had dreamed of visiting. I created a scholarship fund in her name to help students attend college. Over time, I healed. People sometimes ask if I regret my marriage. I do not regret loving deeply. That is part of who I am. But I learned to trust the instincts of those who truly love me. My mother's love did not end when she died. It transformed into protection and freedom. Marcus thought he would benefit from her death. Instead, he exposed his greed and lost everything. I now live with peace. I am independent. I am open to love, but I do not need it to feel complete. Each year on the anniversary of my mother's death, I visit her grave. I tell her about my life. I thank her for protecting me. I thank her for seeing what I could not see. She gave me more than money. She gave me wisdom. She gave me courage. She gave me the strength to stand tall. This is not just a story about divorce or inheritance. It is a story about a mother whose love reached beyond death to protect her child one last time. Because of her, I am free. I am strong. I am happy. And I am finally home. After the judge signed the final papers, I walked out of the courthouse and felt air fill my lungs like it was the first time I had ever breathed. I stood on the steps for a moment and let the sun touch my face. I did not feel joy in a loud way. I felt quiet relief. The kind of relief that sinks into your bones and tells you that danger has passed. Attorney Jackson stood beside me. He did not rush me. He knew grief and freedom can live in the same heart. He said, "You did well." He said, "Your mother would be proud." I nodded because my throat was tight. I could not speak without crying. On the drive home, I kept thinking about my mother. I kept hearing her voice in my head. "Stand tall, baby girl. Do not let anyone make you feel small." I realized she had been teaching me that lesson for my whole life. She taught it when she worked long hours to keep me safe. She taught it when she told me to finish school no matter what. She taught it when she sat beside me at my wedding with worry in her eyes. She taught it again when she was sick and still found strength to warn me. When I got home, the house felt different. Not because the walls changed. The house felt different because I had changed. In the past, I tried to keep the peace. I tried to avoid fights. I tried to please Marcus so he would stay calm. Now Marcus was gone. The silence felt strange at first. Then the silence started to feel like comfort. Kesha came over that evening. She brought food because she always did. She looked at me and said, "You are really free now." I said yes. She hugged me so hard I almost lost my balance. Then she laughed and said, "Girl, we need to celebrate." I told her I did not feel like parties. I told her I wanted peace. She said peace is a reason to celebrate too. The next day, I returned to my mother's house. Her house was still filled with her things. Her smell still lived in the rooms. Some days I could almost pretend she was in the kitchen making tea. I walked through the hallway and touched the door frames like I was touching her memory. At first, sorting her belongings felt impossible. Every drawer held a piece of her life. I opened a closet and found her church hats. I picked one up and cried. I sat on the floor and cried until my body was tired. Then I stood up and kept going because I knew my mother would want me to live. She would not want me frozen in sorrow. I started with small steps. I made 3 piles. Keep. Don't. Throw away. I moved slowly. I took breaks. I talked to my mother out loud while I worked. I told her I missed her. I told her I was angry at the world for taking her away. I told her I was grateful for her protection. Saying it out loud made it feel real. Some days the grief came like a wave. I could be folding a towel and suddenly I would remember her hands. I would remember the way she hummed while cooking. I would remember the way she kissed my forehead when I was sick. Then tears would come again. I learned to let the tears come. I learned that crying did not mean I was weak. It meant I loved. Kesha visited often. Sometimes she helped me clean. Sometimes she just sat with me in silence. That kind of friendship is rare. It is the kind of friendship that does not ask you to be cheerful. It simply stays with you until you can stand again. The church family also showed up for me. Pastor Williams checked on me. Sister Martha brought meals. Brother Thompson helped repair the small damage Marcus left behind. They did not ask questions that made me feel ashamed. They did not tell me to forgive quickly. They told me God sees. They told me I was not alone. At school, my coworkers were kind. Some people asked about Marcus. Some people whispered. I kept my focus on teaching. I found comfort in my students. Children have a simple honesty. They do not care about gossip. They care about safety and attention and love. In the classroom, I could breathe. I could be useful. I could remember who I was. Still, Marcus tried to reach me a few times after the divorce. He sent messages through mutual friends. He claimed he wanted to apologize. He claimed he wanted closure. I did not answer. I learned that not every apology is about healing. Some apologies are about control. Marcus wanted to pull me back into his story. I refused. One day a friend told me Marcus was telling people he was the victim. I felt a spark of anger. Then I reminded myself that I did not need to fight every lie. The truth was already proven. The trust was mine. The court was finished. His words could not change my life now. I focused on rebuilding my home and my heart. I made a decision about my mother's house. Marcus had wanted to sell it. He called it an asset. He saw money. I saw history. I saw the place where my mother carried me on her hip. I saw the place where she prayed at the kitchen table. I saw the place where she laughed with neighbors on the porch. I could not sell it. So I chose to renovate it. I did not rush. I hired honest workers recommended by people I trusted. I fixed what needed fixing. I repainted the walls in warm colors. I replaced old carpet with clean floors. I repaired the porch steps. I planted flowers that my mother loved. I made one room into a quiet reading space with a comfortable chair and a shelf for her books. When the renovations began, I felt guilt. I felt like I was changing her home too much. Then I remembered her letter. She said the money was freedom. She said use it wisely. She wanted me to build a life. She wanted me to move forward. I understood that keeping her home did not mean keeping it frozen. It meant honoring it. It meant making it a living place again. During this time, I also returned to my own dreams. For years, I had put dreams aside because marriage demanded compromise. Marcus never liked when I talked about school. He said it was pointless. He said it was expensive. He said I should focus on making money. He never cared about my passion for teaching. Now he had no voice in my choices. So I enrolled in graduate school for education. I had wanted it for a long time. I wanted to grow in my field. I wanted to become a stronger teacher. I wanted to lead programs that helped children who struggled. On the first day of class, I wore my mother's favorite necklace. I sat in the classroom and felt nervous. Then I smiled because my mother would have loved to see me there. She would have been proud. Studying again was hard. Some nights I was tired from work and homework. Some nights grief still visited and made my mind feel heavy. But I kept going. Each assignment felt like a brick in a new foundation. I was rebuilding myself with knowledge and purpose. I also started traveling in small ways. At first I could not imagine leaving home. I felt like if I traveled I would be abandoning my mother's memory. Then I realized travel could be a way to carry her with me. She always wanted me to see the world. She always said life is bigger than fear. I began with short trips. I visited cities a few hours away. I stayed in simple hotels. I walked through museums. I sat in cafes and watched people. I wrote in a notebook about what I saw. I took pictures of sunsets and sent them to Kesha. With each trip my confidence grew. Later I took a bigger trip that felt important. I visited Ghana because I wanted to learn about ancestry and history and strength. I stood in places that reminded me that my story is part of a much larger story. I felt my mother with me in those moments. Not as sadness but as guidance. I also traveled to Paris because my mother once said she would love to see it. She never got the chance. I carried a small photo of her in my bag. I stood near famous streets and whispered to her that we made it. I told her I wished she could have been there in person. I told her I hoped she could see it through my eyes. Travel did not erase grief. It gave grief room to breathe. It reminded me that life still holds beauty even after loss. Back at home I built a routine that cared for my peace. I started walking in the mornings. I listened to music while making breakfast. I cleaned my house slowly like I was honoring myself. I stopped rushing to please people. I learned to say no without guilt. The more I healed, the more I understood something painful. Marcus did not leave because we grew apart. Marcus left because he thought he could gain money. The timing proved it. The way he acted proved it. The demand for an advance proved it. The vandalism proved it. He wanted to punish me for not giving him what he wanted. That understanding hurt, but it also freed me from confusion. I stopped asking why. I stopped hoping he would become a better man. I accepted who he was. One afternoon Kesha and I sat at a small restaurant. She asked if I ever missed him. I thought carefully. I said I missed the man I believed he was. I missed the dream I carried. I missed the idea of a safe marriage. But I did not miss Marcus himself. I did not miss living with fear. I did not miss walking on eggshells. I did not miss the way he used kindness like a tool. Kesha nodded and said that is growth. She said you are seeing clearly now. Not long after that I created a scholarship fund in my mother's name. I did it because she believed in education. She believed in community. She believed in giving people a chance. She gave me a chance when she worked extra shifts and still came home to help me study. I spoke at the church when the scholarship began. I told the community that my mother taught me real love protects. I said real love does not manipulate. Real love does not come with secret plans. Real love wants you safe even when it costs something. Many people cried. I cried too. Over time I noticed something else. People in the community started coming to me quietly. Women told me about their own marriages. They told me about control and financial pressure and fear. Some said they felt trapped. They felt ashamed. They did not know how to leave. I listened without judgment. I told them about resources. I told them about planning. I told them to speak with lawyers. I told them to build support. I told them they deserved safety. I realized my story could help others. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was real. Because it showed that control can hide behind charm. It showed that money can reveal true character. It showed that a strong support system can save a life. This is when I truly understood my mother's final gift. She did not only protect me from Marcus. She also gave me the ability to build a life that helps others. The years passed. My grief changed shape. It did not disappear. It became softer. It became something I could carry without falling. On certain days I still missed her with sharp pain. Birthdays. Holidays. The smell of her favorite soap. A hymn at church. The way sunlight looked on her porch. On those days I allowed myself to miss her fully. I also thanked her. Because even in death, she found a way to stand between me and harm. Sometimes people asked if I was dating. I smiled and said I was not searching. I was not running either. I was learning to love my own life. I was learning to enjoy my own company. I learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely. In my marriage, I often felt lonely even with someone in the house. Now I felt calm even in silence. On the anniversary of my mother's death, I visited her grave. I brought flowers. I brought a letter. I sat on the grass and read it out loud. I told her I was living. I told her I was studying. I told her I was helping students. I told her I was rebuilding her home with care. Sometimes when the wind moved through the trees, I could almost smell her perfume. I do not claim to understand mysteries. I only know that love leaves marks. Her love left marks on my heart. It left marks on the way I live. When I left the cemetery that day, I did not feel empty. I felt connected. I felt like her life still mattered because her lessons still guided me. The story continues because life continues. Healing continues. Growth continues. And every day I wake up and choose freedom. I choose strength. I choose truth. Graduate school slowly became one of the strongest pillars in my new life. I was no longer studying to prove anything to Marcus. I was not trying to show anyone that I was valuable. I was studying because I loved learning. I was studying because education changed my life and I wanted to give that gift to others. Some evenings I stayed up late reading research articles and writing papers. I would sit at the kitchen table in my mother's house with a cup of tea beside me. Sometimes I would look up from my books and imagine her sitting across from me, smiling quietly. She always believed in education. She believed knowledge could open doors that money alone never could. Balancing work and school was not easy. I taught during the day and studied at night. But instead of feeling drained, I felt purposeful. My students began to notice a change in me. I was more confident. I spoke with more clarity. I carried myself differently. One day a student who often struggled with reading stayed after class. She looked up at me and said, "You always look strong." That simple sentence touched my heart deeply. I did not feel strong every day. But if a child could see strength in me, then maybe I was healing more than I realized. The scholarship fund in my mother's name also began to grow. The first year we were able to help one student attend college. The second year we helped two. Church members donated small amounts. Former classmates contributed. Even some parents from my school gave what they could. At the award ceremony, I stood in front of the church and spoke about my mother. I told them she worked long hours so I could have an education. I told them she believed in planting seeds even if she would not live to see the harvest. I said this scholarship was a seed. When I handed the first student her certificate, I felt something inside me settle. My mother's love was moving forward through other lives. Her story did not end with her death. It continued through action. Over time, people in the community began to trust me with their own stories. Women spoke to me quietly after church. They asked how I found the courage to leave. They asked how I handled the fear. They asked how I survived the shame and gossip. I told them the truth. I said I did not feel brave at first. I said I cried. I said I doubted myself. But I also said that safety is more important than pride. I said that planning matters. I said that having support matters. I encouraged them to speak to professionals. I encouraged them to document behavior. I encouraged them to build a circle of trusted people. I realized my experience gave me empathy. It gave me patience. It gave me the ability to listen without judgment. I did not push anyone to leave their situation. I simply reminded them they deserved respect and peace. About 2 years after the divorce, something unexpected happened. I received a promotion at work. My graduate studies and leadership skills were noticed. I was offered a role that allowed me to help design programs for struggling students across the district. When I accepted the position, I drove straight to my mother's grave. I told her the news. I said, "We did it, Mama." I said, "You worked 3 jobs so I could reach moments like this." I felt gratitude more than sadness that day. My relationship with money also changed. In the past, money had been a source of tension. Marcus treated it like power. He treated it like proof of worth. Now I treated money as a tool. I invested carefully. I met with financial advisors. I created savings for the scholarship. I gave quietly to causes that mattered to me. The inheritance did not make me flashy. It made me stable. Stability gave me confidence. Confidence gave me peace. People sometimes asked if I ever heard from Marcus again. The answer was yes, but not in ways that mattered. He sent a few emails over the years. Some messages apologized. Some blamed. Some tried to reopen conversation. I did not respond. I learned that closure does not always come from conversation. Sometimes closure comes from silence. It comes from refusing to re-enter a space that harmed you. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that he moved to another state and remarried quickly. I did not wish him harm. I simply wished distance. As the years passed, my grief softened. I no longer cried every time I saw something that reminded me of my mother. Instead, I smiled. I began cooking her recipes on Sundays. I invited friends over to share meals. Laughter returned to the house. One evening while sitting on the porch, I realized something important. I was not surviving anymore. I was living. There is a difference between survival and living. Survival is holding your breath and waiting for the storm to pass. Living is breathing fully even when you know storms exist. My mother's final lesson was not only about protection. It was about self-worth. She wanted me to know that I deserved love that did not need to be earned through sacrifice. She wanted me to know that being loyal does not mean tolerating disrespect. I carried that lesson into every area of my life. When new friendships formed, I paid attention to how I felt around those people. Did I feel small or did I feel seen? When work opportunities appeared, I asked myself if they aligned with my values. When romantic interest eventually knocked gently at my door, I did not rush. I did not ignore red flags. I did not silence my instincts. I took my time. And when I did open my heart again, it was with wisdom. I did not look for someone to complete me. I was already whole. I looked for partnership. I looked for respect. I looked for calm. The most powerful change in my life was internal. I no longer feared being alone. I no longer believed marriage defined my success. I no longer believed love meant suffering. On the 3rd anniversary of my mother's passing, I visited her grave once more. I brought flowers and a letter. I sat there as the sun slowly lowered in the sky. I told her I was thriving. I told her the scholarship was helping more students. I told her I felt peace. I thanked her again for the trust. I thanked her for the foresight. I thanked her for loving me enough to see what I could not see. As I sat there, I felt complete. Not because life was perfect, but because I had grown. Outro. If there is one thing I want you to take from my story, it is this. Real love protects. Real love prepares. Real love does not manipulate or calculate. My mother loved me in a way that was steady and intentional. She planned for dangers I could not imagine. She built safety around me even when she knew she would not be there to see the result. I also learned that when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Do not excuse patterns that hurt you. Do not ignore your instincts. Pay attention to actions, not only words. Freedom sometimes begins with heartbreak. Strength often grows from pain. You may not see the lesson while you are in the middle of the storm. But if you hold on to your values and seek wise counsel, you can come out stronger. Today I live in a home filled with peace. I work in a career that fulfills me. I support young people chasing their dreams. I carry my mother's wisdom in every decision I make. She protected me one last time. And because of her, I learned to protect myself. Thank you for listening to my story. If something in it touched you or reminded you of your own journey, remember that your voice matters. Your experience matters. And your healing is possible. Wherever you are in your life right now, I hope you choose freedom. I hope you choose truth. I hope you choose a love that is steady and safe. And most of all, I hope you never forget your worth.